Thank you all so much for being here. And I'm sure that if you're here, you already know something about Jessica Norwood, but I like to give people, you know, their props. So I'll take a little bit from her book to just give you an idea of this incredible woman. So Jessica Norwood is an entrepreneur, an investor, an artist, and a philanthropist who spent her career exploring the ways that money can be an expression of repair and spiritual care. She's a serial social entrepreneur who works with a community of investors to provide Believe in You money as a way to create an economy that loves Black people and encourages others to do the same. She's the founder and CEO of Runway, which is a financial innovation firm committed to dismantling systemic barriers in the name of Black liberation.
Go ahead.
So thank you so much. I feel so fortunate to be here. I do work on Black women and financial innovation, histories of Black women in finance and business. And so one of the things before we talk about what Believe in You money is, I thought it might be helpful to kind of help everybody understand what it is people already believe about money. In particular, you talk a lot about this kind of myth of the American dream.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shennette. I'm so deeply grateful and honored to be with someone. Y'all, please see my sister's book here as well. Okay, so, all right. We're talking about my book, but I just want you to know that I am also sitting next to someone who is so brilliant, and Banking on Freedom is a wonderful book. What people really believe right now, there starts off with when you're starting a business. I don't know if everybody here, has anybody ever own a business or interested in owning a business? Maybe raise your hand so I can kind of get a pulse. If you start, okay, wonderful. So when you start a business, people say, oh, it's really great. You should borrow money from your friends and family. And that's like your first round of money. And if you're like me, you're looking around thinking, what friends? What family has money to invest in my business? And that number is usually around, a sweet spot is about $50,000. And what happens is that you may go to your aunt, your uncle, you may have equity in your home, but these are the ways that you're able to kind of kickstart your business. And for a lot of folks, and particularly Black entrepreneurs and other people of color who have been historically disenfranchised from the banking and financial systems, won't have that kind of early startup capital. And so while the information says we can all start off, we can all kind of get this American dream where we're pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, the reality is that the instructions don't really fairly apply to everybody. And we have to be realistic about that, because we're telling everybody that the way that you make it in America is like, come on, make a business. You can do it. But if you don't have the resourcing to get started, it won't ever happen. You'll always have a great idea on the back of a napkin that you scribble down somewhere, but it'll never really grow. We call it like start but stuck. You'll start it, maybe you use a little bit of money here and there, but you're never able to really grow it all the way. And so what we understand about that Believe in You money is that early round of money, the money that signals that I see you, I believe in you, and I think what you have to contribute to the fabric of our society by creating a business is something that's important. And so what we're wanting to talk about is how do we go back to the folks who we have said, we don't see you, we don't believe, and actually give them the kind of resourcing that sets them up where they're able to really grow their businesses. Yeah.
So one of the other things that this is a slim volume, but it packs a lot of punch and information, is one of the things you talk about is that part of why people believe the kinds of things they believe about the way money works and the American dream, of that anyone, can just start a business through hard work and effort, is because of the way that we're taught and understand history. And Believe in You money provides a really nuanced history talking from slavery. You talk about the Freedmen's Bank, discrimination in many ways, Nixon and black capitalism, and that history really highlights various forms of violence that have adversely affected black entrepreneurship. So I was wondering if you might talk a little bit about the kind of bloody as well as the bloodless violence that has really wreaked havoc on...
So we think that we're starting off with, again, this very same set of rules, because entrepreneurship, the way we've talked about entrepreneurship, is that it's the leveling playing field. Like, if you can create your business, and then the market will take on the rest of the way. And what I'm saying is that getting access into that market is not the same for everybody. And we have to be very serious about what it is that we're asking folks to participate in and do. But beyond that, every time that we have seen a lot of major success for black founders and black entrepreneurs, we also see this very intentional way where exploitation continues to happen. And so one of the examples I talk about is the Freedmen Bank. And I talk about this moment in history where all these black folks, this is post-Reconstruction, are putting money together and they're pooling their resources. These are people who have been in the military. These are domestic workers, and they're putting their money into a bank because they believe in that now that we're out of slavery, that this is our opportunity to actually be a part of the full fabric of this country. And what ends up happening is that money was then used by leaders. These were white men, predominantly, because y'all know the day and time. Okay, I don't want to scare anybody off. I'm just telling you history. That this was, these are facts, that this was a predominantly group of white men who were managing the bank on behalf of these black depositors. And they decided to use the money to invest in what would be speculative investments. These would be investments in the railroad and other kinds of, development, and they lost all of the money. And nobody compensated them. Nobody said, you're coming out of slavery. Wow, you put this money in this bank. We should protect it. No, everybody just said, sorry, that's the cost of doing business. But it's an unfair burden to put down on people who have just left slavery, who are believing in the systems, and then to never compensate, to never repair what that loss would have been. And this is, at that time, it was millions. Now, I don't even know what the compounding impact of that, loss of capital would have been. And that's just one story we talk about. Thank you so much. 157 million. Thank you so much. 157 million. That is devastating when you are just trying to get yourself settled in okay, we are now here in America. All right, what do we do? And then everything is wiped out. And there are countless times in history for black entrepreneurs where that has happened. And so the book does detail other accounts where the wealth has been eradicated and removed, and then there's no conversation. It's just sort of shrug, that's the market, shrug, that's how business is. But we also know there are lots of other entrepreneurs for whom they get the bailout, right? For whom they get, spaciousness to try an idea, to fail and to fail forward, if you will. And so what we're talking about is, where is that kind of capital that creates those kinds of conditions? And that's what we're saying when we talk about believing you money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can say when we're talking about what it is that people believe in money, one of the points you make is that some of the richest, most successful entrepreneurs all got there not by individual genius, but through support from family, but also from other kinds of from avenues that are often closed to black entrepreneurs. And I just want to kind of read a line here talking about the kind of, so less people think that the Freedmen's Bank, that was something that happened, 100 plus years ago. Why are we still talking about that? But this book also traces the kind of ramifications, these kind of legacies of slavery. If you would, you'd say. So she talks about redlining, lynching, extractive financing, mass incarceration, the theft of farmland. So there are many ways this kind of violence is still wreaking havoc on Black entrepreneurs.
And I want to just take a point there and just sort of pull back and say, when we talk about wealth, so the starting point is that the imagination says that you should have enough wealth to start your business. And what I'm saying is, if you're taking people's land, if you are taking their money and they deposited their money and you're investing it in your stealing, if you are doing predatory lending, all the ways that we know that wealth is built, if there are continuously systemic and systematic ways to remove that wealth, then you will never have the starting amount of money. And so I'm going through and I'm just showing you it's not just banking. It's your home. It's your land. It's your access to employment, whether that employment is protected or not, from labor unions on out. All of those ways that we understand that wealth is built, because we don't have those things, and we haven't had generational ability to really set that up. When you tell someone to start a business and don't provide the kind of capital that is more spacious, flexible, and liberatory, then you're just talking.
Mm-hmm. And I know I'm going to move into allowing her to talk about Believing You Money, but I think it's important for people to understand how your own experiences, your own journey to getting this point. In part, you were, and also Runway, I wrote here, is a manifestation, really, of Believing You Money. When we think about where you were raised, around Africatown, your family, but then could you just share with the audience a little bit about your background that already kind of set the foundation for you, but then how you grew to understand this concept, and which of course eventually led to your founding Runway.
Yeah. I might, if it's okay, I might read a little bit out of that and read something about my mother. But I am the daughter of entrepreneurs, and I'm also the daughter of politicians. Right. So I'm constantly thinking of the intersectionality between those things. And I grew up right down the road, 2 hours away in Mobile, Alabama, actually Pritchard, Alabama, for shout out to everybody from Pritchard. And the reason I want to mention it is because it is a majority Black city. And it's a lot like a lot of the cities and places that you might know, even if it's Black or not, where they had industry there and then that industry ends up leaving. And so it is just now like a ghost town. There used to be shopping and all of this energy, and now we're, a bedroom community is what they like to call it, to Mobile. But I grew up also right maybe 3 miles away from Africatown. And for folks who haven't heard yet, Africatown is the place where the last known slave ship, the Clotilda, was discovered and found. And so there is this through line for me around around this question about what we brought over in those slave ships, not just the bodies, but the ideas and the values around what is cargo, what is traded, who gets to be not the commodity, right, but who gets to be in business, who gets to be those people, because we've set up a condition where in this particular story of America, Black people are not the owner in the story. They're the ones who are bought and sold, or sold to in this moment, where we're all consumers now. But at that particular time, we weren't that. So I grew up in the shadows of those plantations and those conversations and that slave ship. And so I don't care, listen, y'all, I don't care what everybody is doing in the government. I am still here to talk about what happened to Black folks, okay? I am still here, and I will still always be here to talk about that, because that is my life. That's where I grew up. That is a part of my story and my heritage, and I am proud to talk about who I am and the fact that we have still made it, and we're still here to talk about those things. So it comes from a place of joy and pride, and also real talk that I want to have with people about what it means to have an America that is really powerfully inclusive and powerfully focused on building a world that others can look at and say, you know what, I want to do that. I want to be a country like this. And in order to do that, we have to talk very seriously about repair. And very importantly, talking about repair really means centering those who have been harmed. And the difference in finance is we mostly center the capital holder. So when we think about what is risky and what is too risky to fail, we're not talking about, is it too risky for Pritchard to fail? Or is it too risky for this community to fail? But we're talking about, well, what happened to the capital holder? And I'm saying, and I'm advocating, and I'm asking you to join in with me to say, no, that's inappropriate to focus on the capital holder. Who we need to focus in on is that community, that borrower, that entrepreneur, those communities who are not central to the conversation when we think about risk. And so I come from a community that really taught me that. And listen, I have to give a shout out to my good sister friend Chandra, who rode over from Mobile with me today. But we come from communities that have a real rich history. And I started Runway. I think we've sort of mentioned a little bit about that. And Runway is a financial innovation firm. We do reparative lending. And by reparative, I'm going to tell you, on a loan that I would give an entrepreneur, it will be a 5-year loan, right? The first 2 years are going to be interest-only payments. And you will never pay over 3% on my loans. Let it sink in, because you're not going to find that kind of money anywhere. Right, everybody's like, ooh, everybody perked up then. This is what I mean about reparative. The way that we're able to do that is because I am talking to my donors and investors, and I'm saying, do you need more money back? Because I feel like you've done well. I feel like if you're a Rockefeller, I think you might be okay. But I'm able to talk to them and say, but we've learned that we need to make more money on this money, but do you really need it? Would you be comfortable with the principal back? Just let me give you the 100% back. That should be great. Do you need more on it? And usually, when I'm posing the question, they have to go and sit down. They talk to their family offices. They talk to their board, and they're like, shucks, do we need more? And they usually come to the conclusion that they do not. And so what Runway is doing is presenting that conversation to philanthropists and other investors who are putting money into our fund, and then we're then able to make the kinds of very reparative and liberatory capital available for entrepreneurs in Oakland, Chicago, Boston, and now soon to be Alabama in 2025. So yeah.
And I know you have plans to spread across the South.
As far as I can go. Thank you.
So now let's highlight here how Believe in You money is different. So one of the things you talk about, well, you really refer to these kind of Afro-Indigenous practices that lay at the heart of Believe in You money.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, and for all of us, before we learned anything about like the financial system and we've got to get our checkbook and we're writing our budgets out and everything, Afro-Indigenous really is about like who we are at the core and our relationship to the people and the planet and the world around us. And to make sure that our investments and how we invest honors the totality of the things around us. And so that's what I mean by Afro-Indigenous. Everybody in here can tap into their Afro-Indigenous understanding of money and relationship. And I'll give you an example. The question really comes down to who matters? What matters? What is sacred for you? Because an investment and who should get the return and what is risky is a question about what is sacred, what is important, and who matters. And so if we're saying it matters, not that we take the housing and turn it into an asset class, but that you have a place to live, that you feel safe, that you are comfortable, you know, that matters. And so when we start to prioritize and really understand that the asset class of a home isn't the thing that matters, so designing changes, how we design a community, how we think about profitability, or that this should be an asset that we should be trading, and that all changes for us. And so when we drop back into an Afro-Indigenous understanding of money and relationship, then we come back to relationship is what I want to say. When we tap into that, and I'm a big proponent of what we call right relationship. Right relationship is checking back in. How am I doing? Are we in community? Not just because I have the capital, because I do sit in the space with a lot of I do steward a $50 million fund and growing, but I am also really very clear about, well, what does it mean to be in relationship? And how do I set the container for you, if you're borrowing from me or you're for you to ask me questions and talk to me as a human being, as a person who, forget the money that I'm just aggregating, I'm just pulling money in. And so is, by the way, all your favorite friends. Nobody has that money singularly. Well, some do. Their names are Bezos. But beyond that, everybody else is pulling in money and aggregating money. So it's not their money personally. It is our resource. And how we relate to each other and talk to each other is also, I think, foundationally about an Afro-Indigenous perspective of right relationship and community.
And other things you mentioned, it talked about the collective and the communal over the individual, sharing risk, aligning investment with values. But for me, one of the most profound and important observations you make about believing you money is when you talk about who is the investor. And the investor is you. The investor is us.
That's a huge thing. Listen, everybody. Okay, so I wrote in this book, like, everybody's like, well, how do we find one of these investors? And I'm like, surprise, it's you. And this is the biggest pushback that my publisher had and everybody has had, because we in this room don't often see ourselves as the investor. And that's one thing that I really want to invite you to question and to sit with as to why not. An investor is a person who is putting some resource, and even if that resource is I'm pre-buying your services or whatever, that additional cash flow, or to know that it's coming in, matters. So if you ever bought a CSA, one of those food boxes, and you pre-ordered, so you know that the farmer, that helps the farmer know that I have buyers already lined up for this next season. You are now an investor. If you're in a cooperative, and maybe you're at a cooperative grocery store or whatever, you are an investor in that particular business. So there are multiple ways that we show up as investors. If you do a crowdfunding campaign, you are an investor. And I want you to stretch and flex your investor muscle. And what I mean by that is get comfortable. Get comfortable talking about yourself as a money mover. And that is something that I really want you to lean into. Because if you're sitting at the table, then the table changed immediately. Already the table changed because you were there. And it's okay if you're sitting there and you've got your $2,500 invested in, and I've got my $25,000 for you to say, how are we going to be in right relationship? That's absolutely appropriate. I want you to know that the way that the things change in our community is when all of us step up and we stop leaving the investor to an elite group. It doesn't need to be that. You can be in that room and in that conversation, and the buy-in ain't that much, okay? It is, $500. You can buy a note with some of these funds. You are an investor. I want you to think about how you're putting your resources out there, but more importantly, why aren't you comfortable using the language? What does that say about the systems, the relationships, and how do I get myself into a place of comfortability around that? Because maybe there's some money conversations that you need to have with yourself about how you feel about money. And I talk a lot about shame and blame and secrecy and things that come up, because when you put Believing You Money out in the world, what you're attacking is the fact that people have been able to hide in the shadows, but that people haven't had an opportunity to really talk very clearly about where the resources go, who's getting them, how they're getting. That is an important point that we can push right now to start changing just even the fabric of what kind of resources reaches our entrepreneur community.
Yeah. And I would just piggyback on that to say that, in my own work, I highlight the financial innovation that is an integral part of Black folks' history.
Yeah.
And so there's so much that we've forgotten, or that have been erased. And so this Believing Your Money definitely brings that to the fore. And so, well, you talk about Believing Your Money. I know you have, you offer definite steps to change. This book, of course, is a first step. And so the question is, can investors who are not fully invested in the idea of Believing You Money, or even aware that they're not invested in Believing You Money, is there a way that they can pivot, to this kind of a vision and make their money love Black people? And you do offer some steps here in this book.
I think the book is first a love letter, and it's an invitation to imagine. And I think just sitting with the first question of, what does it look like if the economy loves Black people? And I think it's such a, sometimes people go into like actionable items, and I'm like, okay, great. But let's just sit with the thought. One, it gives you space to recognize we ain't been loved very well. But then it gives you the invitation to think about, what would love feel like? And I've had people push back and say, girl, I don't see anybody being loved in this economy. And I do talk about that in the book, and that's okay. We don't get to the world we want if we're not courageous enough to imagine it. And we have a crisis of imagination right now. Let me tell you, there are a lot of folks out here imagining a world for you that you're not going to like. And I want to give you the courage. I want to give you the ashe, the mojo, whatever it is, to believe that you can actually have something different. And not because I just think it's a great idea to do, but because we are doing it. It's not a nice to have. I already told you, it can happen. I'm doing it right now. Investors are doing it. You can do this. Right here in New Orleans, you can have Believing You Money yesterday. Absolutely. You just have to have the courage to ask for it, to believe that it's possible. That's what I want to leave you with. So it's at first an imagination. And I like to look at my investors and the community around us and really invite them to sort of sit with that question. The great thing about our investment strategy and work is like, listen, I'm one of those, I don't know if y'all have ever seen The Wiz. I was obsessed with The Wiz as a kid, and my favorite character was actually Eveline. She had she had the best songs. I love them. And it's like, don't nobody bring me no bad news, right? And so thankfully, we have such a powerful investment community that they all know, don't nobody bring her no bad news. And so my investment community is already on the ground talking to people because they're excited. They're excited that they're able to do something that feels meaningful and joyful across the board. So they're telling their friends. They're telling their family members. They're like, here's what I'm doing, and they're inviting them in. So the first way that it happens for folks who have maybe been doing something different is that the community around us continues to nurture us and then invite the right people in who are at the right place and time. And that helps a lot. We have a manifesto on our website. Before you actually kind of go any further with us, we say, we'd invite for you to take a look at our funders manifesto. So you understand that, we're looking to kind of get out of the bureaucracy of everything. Like, people, invest with you, and then you spend more time again leaning more into the capital holder and that relationship and not to the entrepreneurs. And I'm like, I have a job to do. I'm not going to sit here and, babysit all day. So that Thunder Manifesto is another way that we're able to invite folks in. And then I tell them 3 things. I say, if you're doing these 3 base things, you're getting there. 1, long-term capital. Everybody here, long-term capital. And so, if you're buying a note from us, which is not very common at all, most people are doing, 3 or whatever years. But we're at 7 years. And some, I'm also encouraging, give me a 10-year note. That means hold your money in with me, and I will not be making any payments out until that particular moment. So long-term capital matters a lot. I also talk about non-extractive capital. And what I mean by that is sometimes you will have folks where they make an investment, particularly you hear this a lot with equity investments. You invest in a company, and then next thing you know, that founder is pushed out, and they have got a whole new management team. The formula for the company has changed. The culture inside of the company has changed. These are extractive movements, right? So I say non-extractive, and I want to look at your terms. I want to talk about what those terms are, if they're buyback opportunities and things like that. And I'm very quick to say to folks, if you're not doing reparative capital when you're talking about Black and brown founders, then it is extractive. It's a mic drop moment. It is. If it is not reparative, it is extractive. And so, and then the third thing is to be anti-racist. Now, listen, because I don't believe in trying to invest in a thing or solve for a thing if I can't name it. If we can't name it, I can't measure it. We can't talk about it with each other. We can't have a thoughtful conversation. So it needs to be anti-racist. It needs to explicitly be on the side of solving the problem, not just, I'm colorblind. I don't need it. We don't need that. There's other pots of money in the world for you to go and do that. Here, when we're talking about reparative capital, and particularly the fact that Black entrepreneurs don't have the early rounds of money, and because they don't get the early rounds of money, that means that along the way, if you go to seed, pre-seed, seed, Series A, B, C, D, it doesn't matter. If you don't have the starting money, you won't make it to those other areas and pots of money. And in fact, I have friends who are in the venture space who said to me, Jessica, I'm concerned we may not be doing Black founders the service that they need because I can't get them out of Series A, because I don't have the relationships in B, C, and D. Those are big firms at that point, right? These are your Black Rocks and your whatever big firms that you have, investment firms or whatever. If you don't have those relationships, and if they don't see your businesses as viable for whatever things they're measuring around that, then even our best efforts to move folks along is not going to actually happen. So I would rather us prioritize from the very beginning, from the inception, from the early amount of money, what our intention is. And then for all of our entrepreneurs and folks in our pipeline and that we invest with, I've told my team and everybody else, closed loop. We used to invest early and then pass them on to other folks because we thought, oh, well, other people have other resources and we should. No, we won't even do it anymore because we move people to these other pots of money. It may take too long. They're extractive. They're doing all the things that are just not appropriate. So internally, we're going to take you from your first amount of money. I think we've got like a product that's like even as low as like $2,500 if you're an artist and want to buy some art supplies, all the way up to about $250,000 and maybe a little bit more. But we will try to step you through every bit of capital that we can get you through to grow that business, because we are really committed to having a long-term non-extractive, anti-racist process for all of our entrepreneurs. And so we tell folks, if you want to move over to what we're doing, at the least get those 3 things. And the rest of the book talks about the outcomes I want you to check out. I want you to look at, did we release that shame? Did we release that blame? Did we work in cooperative and in community ways? Did we do the things that really make our communities as vibrant as we can make them with that money? Yeah.
Well, we're pretty much about time, out of time. And I do really want to give the audience an opportunity to ask questions. So hopefully if I get a chance, I'll ask my very last question. But let us see. I saw a gentleman on this side and someone on that side and then back there. So let's try those three.
Oh, thank you so much. This was excellent. The thought leadership behind it, I'm just like, my God. Very quickly, so let me ask this. Because I'm in economic development now here in the city. And one of the things I wanted to ask is, okay, I've had to deal with grief, right? A lot of people are going to have to in the span of their life. Now, dealing with physical grief and then transitioning into financial grief. How do you help walk clients and those other relationships concerning through financial grief while helping them to innovate with your financial products?
Yo. You gave me the question. Okay. Listen, it is such a delicate dance. We are all inside. Each person here carries a money story. If you think about how you learned your values around money, what lessons you heard, maybe, save more or this. We're all carrying a narrative around our money, and that narrative is dictating how we show up. And so a lot of times with the entrepreneurs that we're working with, it is to slow things down and to have conversation about what's the history. Tell me your life story, and particularly tell me usually I can catch it around age 6, quite honestly. You tell me what happened to you at 6 years old about a money story, and I can start to piece together some of the things. And then 18, 19, 20, there are periods of time where there is a moment that is defining for you. Each one of you think about it. A defining moment for you. Maybe you didn't have enough money for this, or maybe you were trying to go to college and you couldn't finish the payments. Whatever it is, it's defining and shaping how you feel about the money. And so we spend a lot of time doing that. And a lot of this is tearing those ideas down and rebuilding new ones. And the best way to do that is to talk and to be in community, trusted guidance and space. So around each investment that we make, we do coaching and mentorship and everything for the life of every deal that we do. We do pre-capital advising, post-capital advising, and then there's just this huge network of entrepreneurs. And at that point, they all start really supporting and working with each other as well. But I do find that I can relate to the grief, to the trauma, to the heartbreak of not having enough or expecting a deal to come through and it falls apart, and what am I going to do and rebuild? And so I try to show up with my compassion and my humanity around this to say, I get that. And as an investor, I will say one of the things, a big grief that we all faced was during the pandemic, right? We were all in it together. And particularly if you owned a business, I know a lot of businesses in New Orleans that didn't come back. And I have a portfolio of majority African-American companies, and I knew that we had a weaker financial relationship with banks at that time. I knew that we did not have enough money to last 1 week close, let alone untold amount of time. And so I and my team, in the month of April, we started calling our investors, and we were like, we don't know what we're going to do right now. Like, I don't know that they're going to be able to make their payments. I don't know that they're going to be able to keep their own lights on at their house. Like, forget our payments. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And so we did, 6-month deferments. That was an intense process, because you think a deferment is relatively easy, but the computer would only let you do 1 month. So we had to bring in all new engineers to redesign the entire system to make it work for 6 months, because they were like, well, they could just call in every month. And I said, absolutely not. That's too stressful. Why would I have people call in every month? So we changed the system. So now everybody who works with us, and even people who don't work with us in that system, bless you, y'all have, longer time. But the other thing we did, which hadn't been done before, is that we made universal basic income payments. We gave $1,000 a month to every company in our portfolio straight. You don't have to use it to pay us anything. We had already deferred everything. That doesn't matter. Just have a little something to maybe get you some groceries, to maybe just take care of the things that might be intimate. It's not a lot, but it's just a little something that we can do to keep you going until we figure out what this is, because your success is my success. This is Ubuntu. We are together. We are connected. You want to have your investor believe in you. Believe in you. And it shows up when we are in this traumatic moment, when we're in this stressful moment, that we don't leave you behind. We show up and we try to give the best that we possibly can give, and that looks like these universal basic income payments for 6 months. So they got $1,000 a month for 6 months. And then a lot of those businesses, we also pay for marketing support, so a lot of people were brick and mortar and they had to go up online at that point. And so we supported a lot of those things too. So being in relationship, right relationship will teach you a lot. It will teach you a lot. Thank you for your question. Thank you.
And I will just say that in the book you talk about, connecting with wisdom keepers, and it's also when you talk about the universal basic, the UBI, is that you're pulling examples not just from kind of capitalism, but from anti-poverty activism and social and economic justice.
Our indigenous ways tell us that all of us have to make it. Like when we come out on the other side of this pandemic, if we didn't all make it together, we didn't make it. And so we were rooted in that thought, and we tapped in with, we're social justice organizers, we're friends, we're colleagues, we're entrepreneurs. All of that wisdom comes into play. Right? Yes.
Hi. This is amazing. I'm so glad that I came. I'm just wondering, with the new climate around colorblindness and suddenly where you can't help Black people do anything, and the recent decision by the court that the Minority Business Development Agency has to open itself to white entrepreneurs, are you feeling that you're on a ground that will allow you to hold firm, or do you have some game plan or plan B if they come looking for you? Because I know with Fearless Fund, it's like suddenly, we are just brown people and racism is over, so we can be colorblind.
Yeah, it's a really difficult situation. I'm in due diligence right now for a couple $1 million, and one of the questions is, how will we deal with the lawsuit? It is a big issue. I am, since August, have been regularly on the phones with our attorneys, and we had to change a lot of language out. We have centered on talking about the geographic area that we want to support, and we talk a lot about the principles and values that people have to have, because we can't fully say Black. I say Black, okay, and so we're gonna see how far that goes. But it is a really precarious situation, and the game plan that I have is the game plan we better all have. You better go vote, and be very serious about this climate right now. Be very serious, because the way that they're able to move this is because they already have the courts. I don't know if you're paying attention, but they're able to move this along because these courts are already filled up with judges that will agree with these rollbacks of affirmative action and so forth. And that comes in from who you are electing. And so if you ever think that, this election doesn't matter in this election, please, 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 please shake yourself out of it, okay? It's a very real thing. It's a very serious moment right now. And I think we have to continue. The other thing I'm telling my investors and other folks, that this is the moment to not retreat. I want to see you 10 toes down, deep. You better not retreat at this moment. And so I am also, turning into a little bit of like, you better get in there and stand up and be strong, So, and also I look at Arian and the Fearless Fund and the leadership over there, incredible. I am grateful that she and the whole team there put their battle clothes on for all of us. And whatever you can do to support them, they have a foundation. Please send them some resources because this fight is very expensive. But I'm also ready to defend what I know is right and true. And so if it goes there, then I'll be there.
We only have about a minute for one more question.
Hi, thank you for a really, really inspiring talk. And I kind of wanted to ask, maybe it's a little bit out of your wheelhouse. So I've been doing foreclosure prevention and home ownership preservation in New York City for the last 15 years. And I've seen the extraction of wealth in Black home ownership as a result. And I'm just kind of wondering if you have any vision or any ideas how to bring reparative lending to the mortgage market. And if you could share those, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, it is, gosh, particularly when we think about our homes and the way that we've built an economy up around our housing as an asset class and not necessarily as like our home, our family space. And so I think I'm not an expert on mortgages in that particular body of lending, but what I will say that I continue to find as my North Star is to think about what it means to be in right relationship and in community, and to start to center and source your understanding of the market and of relationships from that particular place. And so there isn't like a really short answer that, a really short pithy answer that I can give to it, because it is a incredibly complex, moving thing. I'd love to see all of these private equity firms out of that market and out of that business and leaving it for regular, everyday people to be able to purchase homes. Yeah. We're complete.
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you so much and join me in thanking Jessica Norwood and make sure you get your copy of Believe in You Money.
Shennette, thank you. Y'all give it up for this wonderful, wonderful moderator, Shennette. Thank you so much.
Thank you.